Hello, and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. This week, I am super excited to be talking about whether or not your kiddo is getting enough sleep. And we have a guest from the National Sleep Foundation, and any of you who have read my super popular blog post on developmental sleep, like across the ages, will see there we're cited regularly in my stuff for recommended sleep totals. So this is exciting for me to talk through this. So Dr. Dzierze, I was going to mess that up. I asked before we started, and then I said I'm going to probably mess it up and laugh at myself. So, y'all, I'm bad at names. Welcome, and I'm so excited to be talking with you today, even though I just messed up your name again.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting National Sleep Foundation. And no worries about the name. It always goes easy in rehearsal. And I tell people once the lights get turned on, once the recording starts, something changes.
I know. It's so true. It's so true. And I'm just notoriously bad for it. So I just own it and make fun of myself for it, laugh about it. Miguel can't be great at everything. So, Joe, tell us a little bit about what you do with the National Sleep Foundation, and then we'll get into this poll and start talking about families and kiddos and sleep.
Yeah, happy to. The role that I hold at the National Sleep Foundation is that I am the Senior Vice President of Research and Scientific Affairs. That basically means that everything that the organization does that's scientifically backed, empirically grounded, all of our advocacy work, all needs to come through my channel. I lead up our Sleep in America poll efforts. I lead up our consensus efforts, our translation of science to the public. So it's a big role, but it's an honor more than anything. My background is that I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I have a PhD in clinical psychology, was a former tenured professor at Virginia Commonwealth University, and before that, UCLA. Published a lot in the peer-reviewed literature, lots of grants, trained graduate students, this whole host of things. But I really wanted to be able to work more closely and directly with the public. And when the opportunity arose to join the National Sleep Foundation, it was something that I just leapt at.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's nothing like translating the evidence to people so they can practically use it rather than it being kind of gatekept in academia. Like, it's so
Yeah,
important.
so much of what academics do, and academics do great work, and
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I will forever be an academic. Just because you leave the ivory tower doesn't mean you stop being a scientist. But so much of what's done there is kept behind paywalls, is written for other academics instead of for the ultimate end user, the public. So really having the opportunity to communicate directly with people through Sleep Awareness Week or Drowsy Driving Prevention Week,
Mhm.
all the different direct communication activities, I think is one of the most rewarding things a scientist can actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said right up front, I use a lot of the recommended sleep totals by age that the National Sleep Foundation puts out. That's actually how I first stumbled across the National Sleep Foundation, like years and years ago. And I find them really, really, really helpful. And I know that the poll that you all recently did was aimed at pediatric sleep, right? And so let's just start off by talking about the findings and sort of what you were looking at, and then we'll kind of take it in a few different directions from there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And let's level set because you've mentioned the recommendation several times. And I think the simple awareness of how much sleep young kids should be getting is so vital and so critical. So I'm just going to run through them really, really quickly.
Absolutely.
Uh, Newborns, those being kids 0 to 3 months, that's how we define them, should be
Hmm.
getting 14 to 17 of hours of sleep per day, not per night, because first of all, that's too much sleep to happen in a night.
Yes.
And as any parent knows, there's no way that happens in a consolidated block anyways for a newborn. After that, you have infants, those 4 to 11 month year olds. So, four until that 1 year birthday, they should be getting 12 to 15 hours of sleep per
Hmm.
day. Then you have toddlers, 1 to 2 year olds, should be getting 11 to 14 hours of sleep per day. Next, you have preschoolers, 3 to 5 year olds, should be getting 10 to 13 hours of sleep per day. And finally, the school age children, 6 to 13 year olds, should be getting 9 to 11 hours of sleep per day. So
Oof.
that's the level set. That's what we should be thinking in our mind. Now, when we went out this last year and we conducted this big nationally representative survey, which we always do once a year, and we call it our Sleep in America poll. And this year's poll was unique and different because we took our validated tools, tools that were made for everyone, not just people presenting at a sleep clinic, and we modified them so that parents could respond on behalf of their young kids. And we asked a whole host of different questions, but a couple things really stood out. One, almost half of parents reported that their kids are falling short of those NSF recommendations that I just listed. So
Mhm.
44% to be precise, but we're going to round up and say just about half of parents are saying their kids aren't getting NSF recommended levels of sleep. And then the thing that I thought was directly related, but very, very telling, was more than half, almost 60% of parents actually underestimated the amount of kids or the amount of sleep their kids needed to be well rested and feel well and function best during the day. And that underestimation was actually quite large, and it was very large for the younger kids. So I already said, newborns need 14 to 17 hours of sleep. But when parents of newborns responded to the question, how much sleep does your kid need? On average, they said 10 and a half hours. So we're missing it by 3.5 to 6.5 hours. There's no
Wow.
way your kid's going to get the sleep they need if you're thinking that they need 4, 5, 6 hours less than they actually do. So it's
Yeah.
very telling.
I find that really fascinating. And like I said before we hit record, like my qualitative research brain saw that and was like, whoa, like I want to run with that because it's so interesting. And this is the difference between a representative sample, like real research, right? And like who I see is not representative, just by definition, right? Because they're seeking out a sleep coach,
Yeah.
they're seeking out a class on newborn sleep. And so it is very different. But I have found that the rise of apps for like baby and toddler sleep
Hmm.
actually skews the opposite. It's telling people like your baby at 6 months needs 16 hours of sleep or they're not getting enough. And I like see that prediction from the sleep app world of tracking, throwing out there like every baby needs 12 hours overnight, every baby needs 16 hours of sleep, and something to the high end, right?
Hmm.
And that creating its own stress,
Yeah,
sort of
I
on the opposite
wonder
end
if
of the
I
spectrum.
wonder if you think that might be intentional. I don't know. So I don't know the
Probably. I
developers
mean,
of these
probably.
things, but if you aim for 17 hours, maybe you wind up with 13 or 14.
Hmm.
So maybe perhaps it's an intentional, I don't want to say mislead, but they intentionally give you the high end so that if you miss the mark and you fall short, you'll still be all right. That's like the good Samaritan in me or the optimist in me coming out. I don't know what the case is, or perhaps the developers are just uninformed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could be either. I was going to take a more cynical view and say it makes it easier for them to sell their sleep training programs if you
Oh,
think your baby is going to have their development hurt if they don't have 12 hours of sleep overnight,
yeah. So you did take
right?
the more pessimistic, cynical approach that it's a sales tactic, and
It could be any of them.
it could be the cold that I'm having right now or whatever I'm fighting, but that didn't even cross my mind. And I'm actually kind of embarrassed that it didn't cross my mind because I'm usually that person. But you're right. I mean, if the whole point in an app, and a lot of these apps, I have a 4 year old and 6 year old myself. I remember some of these apps. There's the freemium model where it's free, but then if you want the things that will supposedly
Uh-huh.
help, you have to pay for.
Uh-huh.
So
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
could be one of the tactics to get you there. And the whole scare tactic around sleep, I don't know. I feel like it's I don't want to say dated, but it's 10 years old. I think people are starting to realize that the relationship you have with sleep is very important, and that if you're constantly worried about it, it's going to have a negative impact right off the bat.
I love that you're saying that you think that's shifting. I don't see it shifting. I see it worse than 10 than like I started working in the sleep world 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's worse for a lot of parents at least. Which
Yeah.
again, I'm not seeing a representative sample, so it's kind of
Hmm.
one of those like, we find these little pockets where things don't always line up as true. to like a big picture, but
You
I
know
think
what
the
though? What you might be reflecting on is the specific pediatric space too. Because
yes. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
about the sleep space more broadly. I think about some of the
Mm-hmm.
very popular books that really helped, like catalyst. That they served as catalysts for a lot of the public discourse. A lot of those things were like, if you don't get this much sleep, cancer and Alzheimer's, and all those things are true, but they were very like fear forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe changed for the general public, where now we think about wellness and health. But maybe in the
Yes.
sleep space, for children in particular, is what you're picking up on.
Yep.
That still a lot of this is unregulated. It's
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say predatory by nature, but you're targeting parents at probably some of their weakest time points. I remember being up all night. I
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking that I probably shouldn't be making decisions right now and driving wasn't safe and all the rest of it. But you go through and you push through because there's really no other options. And so
Yeah.
you're searching and you're seeking. And then once you click on something, you're bombarded by the next link and the claims, the marketing claims don't always line up with the science and everything else. So I can recall,
Yeah.
and maybe that's, it's been a while since I've been in that space, but you live it every day.
Yeah. I think it's also, I don't want to necessarily take this conversation too far in this direction, but it's also like a lot of the ways we frame sleep in the first couple years isn't very developmentally informed,
Mm,
right? Like the push to get a baby to consolidate sleep as fast as possible, without a lot of discussion of the nuance of temperament and like health challenges and just sleep needs and things like that, where it is historically been just, we should get baby sleeping 10 to 12 hours, sleeping through the night as fast as possible. They shouldn't need a feed, they shouldn't need you. Like really missing that like more relational element. And I think
yeah.
that is increasing. But when we're coming at pediatric sleep, the information has never really started with the evidence base on norms and such. It always started before we started researching
True.
that. Goodness.
And you're hitting on like a very important nuance. What's developmentally normal may not always align with what's optimal,
Uh-huh.
and those things may not align with what's realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, question, when you were asking these questions about like how much sleep a baby's getting and how much I thought, did you share those, like, were those recommendations part of that question, or were they just without any framing of like, do you think your baby's getting enough sleep? Were they looking at those totals, or were they just kind of gut answering that question?
No, yeah, we did not provide them any context. So we asked
Okay.
them, the typical questions that you would ask: what time does your child go down? What time do they get up? How much sleep do you think they're getting? How many times they wake up? But then the one question towards the end was, how much sleep do you think your child needs to
Hmm.
function their best throughout the day? And so
That's
it was a little bit
interesting.
of a blank slate without
Yeah.
any prompting, without any clues, just to see what parents thought
Yeah.
was or their children's sleep need, if you will.
Yeah. How do you think the information you gather, just thinking about it, and the recommendations, how do you think that lines up with some portion of the population being lower sleep need? I mean, obviously, a parent's expectations aren't necessarily going to attune to that quickly, but thinking that there are some adults, even right, that have a lower sleep need. I see a disproportional amount of these kids, because they're often the ones that the recommendations make them feel like they're failing because their kiddo really doesn't need that much sleep. But is that something you guys reflected on a lot, or is that too small a piece of the overall?
Yeah,
Um,
I think when you think about random population level stats, there are going to be parents of children with, whose sleep needs are on the lower side of the bell curve.
mhm,
They're going to be included in our survey,
mhm.
but they wouldn't make up 50% of the respondents. That's
Yeah,
not, I think, a realistic thing.
yeah,
So true low sleep need children certainly exist, but they're uncommon. And this is one of the worries or the concerns when you come out with consensus-based, evidence-based recommendations that have a range. I think ranges are great because it gives people, it lowers anxiety. Hey, if I'm
yes.
anywhere in here. But the thing is, with any rule, most people think they're the exception. It's
Mhm.
just human nature, right? I could think about oh, my grandmother smoked until she was 99 and was healthy. So people just naturally think they're the exception to rules. But when you think about these recommended durations for sleep, they're the normal bell curve. So most people are going to fit in the middle.
Hmm.
Not everyone is going to be at the tail end as an extremely low sleep need or an extremely high sleep need. So some of
Yeah,
that's in there, but I don't think it was enough to really power or skew the findings that we are, revealed here.
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I'd like to explore maybe some of the reasons kiddos might be not getting enough sleep. Maybe kind of talk about that. And then I just want to toss at you some of the things that I've seen that I think sometimes lead parents to underestimate. And I'm curious how that like lines up with the way you connected
Hmm.
your data. And again, I always like to caveat I'm not seeing a representative sample, right? I'm seeing
Yeah.
a small, specific sample. But like not getting enough sleep, like I legitimately see that as well, right? And I personally see it a lot with daycares and napping, developmentally inappropriate nap rhythms, and kiddos that can't nap in noisy, crazy environments.
Yeah.
Those two things are when I tend to see littles coming home, especially babies, because toddler rooms it tends to be one set nap time, and they really make it
Mhm.
nap conducive. But especially those babies, man, they come home and they are falling apart because they got like 30 minutes of sleep the whole day, and I'm just like, I feel so bad for the baby. I also feel so bad for the parents because that's hard to recover from.
Hmm. No, I think that's a wonderful thing. And just to start with, it's probably the case that insufficient sleep in young children is not about a single cause,
Yeah,
right?
of
If it
course.
was, it'd be easy to fix. You just find that
Exactly.
thing and then everything goes away. It's a
Exactly.
combination of the developmental biology schedules, whether it's family schedules, daycare schedules, the
Hmm.
environmental factors. Oftentimes we forget about it. There's a reason why, as adults, we sleep better when it's cool, when
Yes.
it's dark, when it's quiet, when we feel
Yes.
safe and comfortable.
Yes.
And those things matter to children as well.
Oh yeah.
So all of these different things, but I mean, you hit specifically on daycare and nap schedules. All kids are different and they have unique biological rhythms and circadian rhythms, and they're more likely to
Hmm.
nap at certain times than others. And, whether they prefer to be held or rocked, whether the noise is there or not, all of that can play a role. And I think it moves beyond the daycare too. Are parents who are staying at home probably more likely to pick up on these cues? Probably, but a lot of them can be subtle and
Hmm.
challenging to implement within a parent's schedule, right?
Hmm. And a weekend, I mean, think about a weekend schedule. I mean, you have two kids, right? I have two kids, mine are
Hmm.
8 and 13. But like, oh man, the weekend when you have an older kiddo and you're trying to get a baby need met while you're running around with a toddler or preschooler, like that's hard too.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I wound up with two completely different sleepers. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. The 6-year-old came first. Both of them were terrible at the beginning, early stages, and we worked
Yeah.
through that and we did what we had to do. But we were so protective and rigid with my 6-year-old schedule that this little boy now can basically only sleep in his bed because that's
Uh,
all he ever did.
yeah.
We'll take long road trips. My 4-year-old will fall asleep immediately in her car seat, and my son will tell him, go to sleep, just relax. I can't. He cannot sleep unless he's laying down in a
Oh,
dark room because that's what
poor
he
guy.
only did. It
Yeah.
was great at the time. It was a little bit too rigid, and looking back, you always, hindsight's 2020, but it really goes to show too some of the early learning that can occur and that can, have a lasting consequence.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of flexibility, right? If your
Mhm.
kiddo will allow it, let's try to keep it going as much as
Yes.
possible. Like fall asleep, nap, in a couple different locations. Not necessarily for nighttime sleep, but like, do a baby wearing nap, do a stroller nap,
Yep.
do a contact nap and a crib nap if that works for you.
Mhm.
Help your baby fall asleep with a few different inputs. Rigidity, it can exactly be helpful in some situations and also cause chaos in other
Yeah. And you
situations.
know what, oftentimes, and this is just me, being a little vulnerable, I guess, is that it's a reflection of the parents' anxiety too,
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
We were struggling throughout the night, so we were
Yeah.
doing everything, and it was so by the book and so regimented. And it ultimately it worked out, But now we have two completely different sleepers as a result. We have one where we had more flexibility who can sleep and nap in different places, and then we have
Mhm.
another one who needs to be laying down in a dark room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard though, right? When you're in the middle of it, you're
Yep.
doing the best that you can with the
Th-
resources and information you have, with the child you have, right?
Yep.
Because kids inherently do also sleep differently, right? No matter what we
Yeah.
do.
Yep.
And we're just parenting in reaction to that.
Yeah. You're in survival mode, for that first year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I love how you said and highlighted that like there's so many reasons that sleep needs not being met because I think for everything, like why a baby's sleeping well or why they're sleeping poorly, it's always many factors. You
What was
know.
really interesting when we looked at the reported duration or the amount of time that these kids were sleeping, we
Mhm.
saw like the highest percentage, which is not surprising, of kids who were not getting recommended levels of sleep were those newborns. And then it went down when you got to 411, 4 to 11 month olds. The highest percentage of kids who were getting the recommended level of sleep were the 1 to 2 year olds, and then a
Oh,
little bit
interesting.
less for the 3 to 5 year olds. But then once you get in those school age years, it got down to 50% again. And so you see this really interesting, like once the biology sets in and there's some flexibility, but parents are still in charge and school hasn't started and the schedules align. There's the highest level, and then it just slowly started to go down too. So really interesting developmental trajectory we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are in that older category,
Mhm.
right? And getting them enough sleep is hard. Like genuinely because school day is long, right?
Yeah.
We get home, we have to eat, there's homework now. Like and then you want to actually like spend a bit of time with them and then to wind them down from that, get them to sleep and get them up on time, like it's hard. Like
Yeah.
it is hard. And then I have an ADHD kiddo who they have more trouble falling asleep. He's a night owl and it doesn't work
Mhm.
very well with school. Like
You
so
make
I remember looking over this and I was like, "Oh my god, yes, totally for the school age kiddos. I can see how those numbers came about. I don't
uh-huh.
even like absolutely.
You
It is a
mix in an
struggle."
extracurricular, and my
Uh-huh.
son who's 6, so he's right in that category. Just two different things. He's in scouts and he's trying baseball, and both
Uh-huh.
of those things are once a week on school nights,
Yep.
starting at 6:30 until 7:30.
Yep.
So then you have to drive home. You're at 8 o'clock. Did you eat beforehand? Did you eat afterwards? When are you? Just the whole slew
Mhm.
of questions that arise now from having this extracurricular event.
I'm so interested like that the newborn phase had such a high percentage of not getting enough sleep, but also how low parents thought their sleep
Yeah.
should be. Like that to me is fascinating because like so many newborns are so sleepy and they just sleep no matter what you do. I mean, not all, but a lot of them. You're holding them, they fall asleep. You're feeding them and they fall asleep.
Yep. Yeah, what was
You
really
know?
interesting. So, like, if we just get like super, super like detailed into the data, you saw
Yeah.
that parents of newborns said, on average, my kid needs 10 hours and 34 minutes. So let's just call it 10 and a half hours.
Hmm.
Of infants, 4 to 11 month olds, 10 hours and 33 minutes. So let's just call it 10 and a half hours. 1 to 2 year olds, 10 hours and 10 minutes. So almost 10 and a half hours. It's the intriguing that parents across the first 2 years of life were all estimating their kids need about the same amount of sleep, which to me speaks to a general education and awareness situation.
Hmm.
But also, it could be one of those situations where, child sleep is difficult and parents all want to be thinking that they're doing okay, so maybe there is an estimation error or just difficulty estimating because you'd have to add up a lot of these different naps and
Yep.
all these little details there. But also part of it could be like I want to feel like I'm doing the right thing, and I know little Susie is sleeping 10 hours, so I'm going to say that she needs 10 hours because
Yep.
I want to I don't want to say that I'm not getting her what she needs.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, our brains do that kind of stuff without us even consciously being aware.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's interesting because kind of back to the apps. I find that a lot of parents will take what the app says as their kid's average sleep total, right?
Hmm.
And yet, when we talk about how they're logging that overnight, because they'll be like, oh, my baby goes to sleep at 8 and they're up at 7. So we have 11-hour night, but they're only getting 9 hours of sleep overnight. I'm like, okay. And we'll kind of talk about it. And they're only counting the sleep when the baby's back in the crib.
Hmm.
And they don't realize that like babies can be in light sleep while they're feeding or while you're rocking them, or like, like, that you as a parent are way more awake and for way longer than your baby is at most weeks. And so it's just really interesting to me, like the way that parents interpret what is awake and what is asleep overnight.
Yeah, yeah. Overnight, I think is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to remember these recommendations for sleep duration are not nighttime recommendations.
Yep.
They're the 24-hour period. So across
Yep.
the whole day, this is how much sleep. And it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to capture naps, but naps are necessary. They're
Yeah.
needed. Your kid will not get enough sleep at night alone, especially in the early years
Oh
of life.
yeah, absolutely.
So to calculate naps, to include those in the durations, I mean, our this poll that we put out, over 90%, all the way through 2 years, and then from 3 to 5 year olds, you still have 50%. The intriguing part was over a quarter of 6 to 13 year olds. Parents were still reporting that they nap on a regular basis.
That
Um,
surprises me.
that does, but it could be a reflection of a need, right? That you're
Mm.
you're you're compensating for perhaps nighttime insufficient sleep
Uh-huh.
by getting some during the day. But you're right. I mean, over a quarter of 6 to 13, my 6 year old doesn't nap anymore.
My kids stopped napping at like 2.5, and
Okay.
then when they started all day preschool, because in DC, well, you're localish to me, right? I'm in DC, so
Close.
like we have
Yeah.
universal pre-K,
Hmm.
and so they offer like a 45-minute nap or so, and so both my kids started napping again at about 3.5 when they were in PK3,
Hmm.
and was terrible. Honestly, it was so terrible because then they weren't tired until like 9:30 at night, and
Mm.
they did not get enough. They got less sleep with
Yeah.
that nap at
Yeah.
preschool that I could not control because this
Yeah.
is DC public school. They do not care if I don't want my child offered a nap. I mean, they can't make them sleep, but they're having that quiet time as a classroom. And
Hmm.
like the day's exhausting, and so they picked up napping again for at least 6 months, and it was terrible. It was so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, like my kids both dropped their nap on the younger side, and nothing. I mean, with my daughter, I was a sleep specialist. Like, I mean, there's literally nothing I could do to get that child to
Yeah.
nap.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's different.
Yep.
And sleep needs are different and sleep
Mhm.
preferences are different. But you're right. I mean, this kind of reminds me of something you said at the beginning when we were chatting, that you have this background in anthropology and this qualitative stuff. So when you run a big survey, you're limited into
Yep.
how you can ask a question and how people could respond. But maybe if there was an opportunity to sit down with some of these parents of the 6 to 13 year olds and say, tell me about these naps
Hmm.
and tell me more about their nighttime sleep or their daytime behavior and functioning, and who's initiating the nap. Is it the child? Is it the parent? What's the
Hmm.
arrangement when it's happening? It's intriguing, and it leads to many, many more questions, which is typically what happens with research.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Do
that's why
good.
we need both, right? Like we need
Yep.
polls like this because it gives us a really cool snapshot of data, but then it makes like your mind go, what
Yep.
else would we dig into here now that we have, this data? What else can we do? Like, what else can we ask? Where
Yes,
else could we go?
certainly.
But yeah, no, I love that emphasis on reminder. Like naps are important, and they're not all going to look the same, but uh, their need is there, and that's um, one of the things like I struggle with my family is when like the daycare, the way they run naps, and I'm not hating on daycare in any way. I have so many clients that have such wonderful daycares, but when they have a kiddo that struggles to nap at daycare, it's there's only so much that can be done. It's different if you have a nanny and you can get when you do these exact things, but they have lots of kids. Um, I always just feel so bad because it's so hard when your kiddo is clearly not getting the daytime sleep they need, and they really cannot completely make it up at night because their night sleep is often worse when they are lacking naps so significantly during the day. Not like a little bit not enough sleep, like, significantly not getting the rest that they need. And it's so hard.
No, I mean it's tough, and it's tough for the kids, and I love that that's where you started. Like you feel bad for the kids because sleep is so important. And again, we're not going to go back to those scare tactics, but
Hmm.
I mean parents reported it in our poll that when a kid sleeps poorly, it has a noticeable impact on their daytime functioning.
Hmm.
So I think it was like 8 in 10 parents said, "Yeah, I can tell when my kid has not gotten enough sleep." The reverse side was actually, I thought, very telling and very important. Is that even more parents, so almost 9 in 10, said when my kid gets enough sleep, I see improvements in their functioning, in their mood, in their ability to kind of follow direction. So we're seeing even more people are seeing the positive benefits of
Hmm.
good sleep than people are seeing the negative benefits of poor sleep. So 7 in 10 compared to like 9 in 10. So I thought that was really interesting and telling. But we see it every day. If my daughter, who's 4, 4-year-olds are gonna make a mountain out of a molehill. It's their
Hmm.
nature. It's their nature.
Yeah.
But when it's an extreme and she's crying for some reason, and then I, console her, and 5 minutes later I turn around and she's basically tucked herself in on the couch and is just taking a nap on her own accord, and she's not
Yep.
a napper, it's telling to me.
Yeah.
The emotional regulation, the ability to process and deal with things not going their way, to overcome obstacles and difficulties. Again, these aren't normal things for 4-year-olds, but it's harder when you haven't gotten enough sleep. And that means it's harder for the whole family because we're a
Yes.
unit. We're not just individuals next to each other.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And I think that's so important, to think of it as a system, right? We're all connected. We're all part of a whole thing. And that's, I mean, naps, correct me if I'm wrong, but like that is what a lot of the research on naps shows, like that they are a chance to reset their mood, their emotion regulation, their ability to learn and process, kind of wake up more rested and, move on with whatever next portion of their day, depending on, how old they are.
Yeah, I mean, naps serve a great purpose. They help us make get our sleep need. And sleep is important for all those sorts of things. But for kids, yeah, they certainly, serve as a time to reset, to rebalance, to kind of reboot, if you will. I once heard someone say that sleep is just, it's a little bit different in adults than it is in kids.
Hmm.
So when I don't get enough sleep, my batteries may be running low, and that's how I feel it. I
Hmm.
feel more lethargic, less motivated. But with a kid, it's not that the battery is low, it's almost like there's a system glitch, right?
Yes, yes,
So they're more
absolutely.
irritated. They might even be, instead of more lethargic, they're the opposite. They're more hyperactive.
Yes.
They're all these things, which also then leads to a situation where adults who are experiencing their sleepiness differently might not be, the best at picking up when a young person hasn't gotten enough sleep. It's
Yeah.
hard to look at someone bouncing off the walls and say that person needs more sleep, you know?
Uh-huh. The number of times that we talk about like sleep timing and sleep distribution with the families that I work with, and I'm like, wired can mean that they are dysregulated from not like being awake too long or not getting enough sleep, right? Like I see it both sides with little kiddos. Like
Mhm.
sometimes like they didn't sleep enough throughout the day, but sometimes it's like, well, they're 9 months old and they've been awake for 5 hours. Like they're past the point their body needed to sleep and they're just dysregulated. And maybe that comes out in crying and melting down, but it can just as easily come out in like just hyper wired craziness.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. So like that wired and tired feeling, but the idea that there's just a glitch, that it's just the
I
whole
love
thing
that.
is just off at that point.
Yeah.
And that sometimes you need that reset, and that reset could be a nap if it's during the day, or it could be the nighttime sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't know if you asked anything about it in the poll, but I know you have stuff on the website about it. But like thinking about the importance of that wind down, sleep hygiene, bedtime routine piece, and
Yeah.
setting up for a good night sleep for kiddos. Did you ask anything about that? Was that piece of this poll or?
We
Um,
did. So we asked some really interesting questions about the sleep routine,
mhm.
what people do at night to help set the stage. Because NSF, National Sleep Foundation, huge proponent, big believer in the importance of a consistent, relaxing wind down routine, no
Yep.
matter your age. No matter your age.
Me too.
Sleep should not be a surprise. When it's a surprise for an adult, it's tough. Imagine for a child who's going through a lot of things with their imagination, their autonomy, their independence, their need for close comfort and everything else. So we asked about a whole host of different things about reading books at night, telling a story, singing a song, saying a prayer, playing a device for stories, turning on the nightlight, sound machines, blackout curtains, technology to monitor sleep. We asked about all these different things, and we said, do you usually do this as part of your nighttime routine?" And so you see some really interesting developmental changes across these years from newborn all the way to the 6 to 13-year-olds. But
Hmm.
across the board, if we just take averages, the most common things were parents using room darkening or blackout curtains,
Hmm.
reading books before bed, and sound machines.
That
Then
sounds about right.
after that, you'd see maybe about a third saying that they were using night lights, just over a quarter saying a prayer with their children, and then just under a quarter singing a song or using monitoring, because those are probably the younger kids
Hmm.
playing music on a story or a story on a device. But you see these really interesting, just these developmental trajectories of reading a book was, for those newborns, the ones under 1 years, maybe
Hmm.
33%, and then it went up to 52% for 1 to 2 year olds, all the way up to 61% for 3 to 5 year olds, and then back down to 35% once
For
kids
their
were getting
school.
older to the six to
Yeah.
13 year olds. So you see these really interesting, patterns across time. What else was surprising, was some of the co-sleeping arrangements that people said
Mm.
that they use and how those maybe changed a little bit across time. But, especially considering a lot of the recommendations, and I think it's important, safe sleep practices are important, and I would never say anything against them. Safe sleep is important. But a lot of parents said that they would lay in their child's bed until their kid fell asleep. They would stay in the room until the child fell asleep.
Hmm.
They might share a bed for the full night. They'd share a bed for the beginning of the night,
Yep.
or their kid entered their room at some point throughout the night. And again, these things tended to change and, vacillate across time, but they were, upwards of 20, 25% of parents regularly saying that they were engaged in some of these things, which again goes to show sleep is biological, it's physiological, but it's also relational and emotional.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have on hand the numbers across the ages for like sharing a bed with your child for part of the night, like the newborn, the infant, the toddler?
I have, so I have them broken by all those different things. You just tell me what you want. So if we said sharing a bed for the full night, or you want at the beginning of the night, what would you
Um,
like?
I don't
Laying in the
know.
child's
All of
bed?
it. Oh my
All of
goodness.
it. I mean, there's
So
some
many variations.
interesting. Let's just say sharing bed for the full night,
Hmm.
because that would be your traditional
Bed
definition of
sharing.
bed
Yep.
sharing, right?
Yep.
So for kids under 1 year, it was at its highest. 22% of parents said that they did this.
I love that.
So 1 in 5. And again,
Hmm.
this is I'm not going to speak about the what went behind the recommendations, but this would be the place where like the American Association of Pediatrics would say no, right?
I mean, I'll be full disclosure, right? And anyone listening to the podcast knows this. I'm fully supportive of safe bed sharing. I firmly in the UK camp on this, which is don't parents do it, right? And depending on the survey, we get different percentage
Mhm.
numbers, right? If we don't talk about how to do it safely, then you're probably not
Well,
doing it safely.
I mean, that's
So,
the key. That's the key. I think
yep,
that those recommendations, again, I don't want to get into specifics because, I think that organization does a lot of good things.
yeah,
But when you come out and flat out say don't do something, what you have is a whole bunch of parents that are probably not doing it in the safest way.
exactly.
But it's telling that in the US, in a place where that is a very known hard stance by the leading organization,
Yep,
1 in 5 still said, yes, I did it on an anonymous survey, which means it's probably higher.
yep. Because a lot of people won't even write that down
Yep.
because they
Yep.
feel so much shame or like they're going to be judged or,
Exactly. So
yep,
then when you move on to 1 to 2 year olds, still 20%. So again, 1 in 5.
yeah.
3 to 5 year olds, 18%. And then it dropped for 6 to 13 year olds was at 10%. But still 1 in 10 parents sharing a bed for the full night for their 6 to 13 year olds. Some really, again, I think telling numbers.
And that's not even capturing because you split it out differently. So, like, if you started the night or ended the night with a child in your bed, those numbers aren't captured in that
Yep.
number, correct?
Yeah, those are, yeah, because this is for the full night.
Yep.
This is for the full night. So, staying in a kid's room until they fall asleep, those numbers were all higher. Those are at like a quarter, 1 in 4. But child entering your bed, at some point in the night, again, you have 12% of kids under one, which basically means a parent went and got that child and brought them back into the
Mm-hmm.
bed, right? 9% of 1 to 2 year olds, 18% of 3 to 5 year olds. I think that spike right there is really interesting. So I have a 4 year old, so she's right in that age range, and we just
Mm-hmm.
went through this whole thing
Nightmares,
with
I
her.
wonder.
She didn't know how to go back to sleep on her own.
Yep.
So she
Yep.
woke up and there was a skill she had not learned, and instead of trying to learn it, she would cry out for us. And then once she realized she could just get up and come to us, that's what
Yep.
happened. And we were so tired that we didn't try to intervene. And then when we did try to intervene, we did the thing that you probably shouldn't do. Is I'm a big proponent of, like, especially with a 4 year old, don't try to intervene in the middle of the night at 2 in the morning. That's probably the
Uh-huh.
bad time. Let's talk about this during the day. Let's talk about
Yep.
this as we're going to bed. But anyways, 18%, that's the spike right there, for children entering the bed, 3 to 5 year olds, and still 7% of 6 to 13 year olds entering the bed at some point. So all of these numbers were higher than probably a lot of people would have expected.
So if you put those together, right, we have was it 22 and then 12? So we're like up in the 34%
Yeah, so
is bed sharing for part of the night, maybe. I mean, like I might be missing some there, but at least that are
more
bed
than one
sharing.
in three. Yeah, more than
Yeah.
one in three. And you have things at the laying with your child at the in the bed to help them go to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
just staying in the room. So really, really interesting information. But it goes to show, like, the lengths that people will go to help their kids,
Yeah. Well, and
right?
I think for so many parents who feel like they are the only one who can't keep their child in the crib all night, like that is really validating.
Hmm.
Like this is a common struggle for
Yep.
many reasons, but like when you are the only one who's really seems like they're struggling with sleep with your young child and all your friends' kids are pretty chill, easy sleepers, man, to know like to see these percentages, I think is really validating that like, yeah, a lot of parents are in the situation. You are definitely not alone with that struggle.
There's definitely something normalizing about it. Like you said, if you feel like you're the odd person out and you know that, you're not telling your pediatrician what you're doing, there's a certain amount of, like, almost hidden secret shame.
Yeah,
It's a tough place to be. It's a tough place to be.
it is. It is. So, as we're kind of wrapping up, is there anything else like fun and exciting or really noteworthy that we didn't touch on? Like, gosh, it sounds like you guys asked so many fascinating questions in this
There
interview.
are 3 points that I'm going to try to lump them all together because I thought it
Yeah.
was very, very interesting, right? Because we spoke about all these different things, the behaviors, how much sleep is your kid getting? We
Hmm.
asked about, do they wake up? What's the routines like? But we also asked, how much time do you spend thinking about your kid's sleep on a typical day?
Ooh.
So first of all, 74% of parents, so 3 and 4, said that they do think about their kids' sleep daily.
Hmm.
And the average amount of time among those parents who do think about it, so we took out everyone who said zero,
Yep.
but among the 3 out of every 4 who said, I think about my kids' sleep daily, it's over 2 hours a day.
Was that across all ages or was it
Across
like
all ages. So this is across
wow.
all ages, but it really didn't vary much by age. Like,
Wow.
even the older parents of older kids were still thinking about their kids' sleep, over 2 hours a day. So it's a ton of time. If you
A
just do
lot
the
of
math
mental
on that,
effort.
if you do the math on that, because I did it in preparation for this, it comes out to over 30 days for a year. You're talking about a month, a
Oh
month
my
of the year.
gosh, a month out of the year
It is
on
a
wow.
crazy amount of time. We also asked parents, which I thought was a really interesting question. When your child has poor sleep, how much would you be willing to pay for them to have a good night of sleep? So first thing is there was a lump of parents who said, I'm not paying anything, and
Of course.
that's right. But 6 and 10, 61% said that they would pay something, with the average being $71
That's
for one night.
interesting to me.
For one night. Now
Yep.
think about this. If your kid has 3 nights of poor sleep in a week, that means in a year you're over $11,000.
Wow.
So you
Yeah.
have 30 days of your life in a year, $11,000 in a year. But then we also asked, the very last question was, how often do you talk to your kids about the importance of sleep? And 50%, 49% exactly, but 50, said that they never talk to their kids about the importance of sleep. So you have parents
Wow.
thinking about it, carrying that mental load, as you said, be are willing to invest financially, but it seems like they just don't know what to do, right? They're not having the conversation, the mental load. the willingness to contribute financially is not translating into any behavior. So I would just encourage everyone to take that simple step and just talk to your kids about how important sleep is. Think about it like brushing your teeth. Why do we brush our teeth? To keep our teeth healthy. Why do we sleep? To keep our bodies and our minds healthy,
Yeah.
right? Talk about it. Don't carry it all yourself, but it could be a reflection of the fact that as adults, we're not sleeping well. So maybe we just don't know what to say.
I mean, I say that to parents all the time. I'm like, modern life does not support good quality sleep. And
Yeah.
most of us as adults never learned what good sleep habits are.
Yeah.
And so then we're floundering around with this baby who's totally dependent on you, just like trying to figure it out because you were never taught. You probably didn't have good sleep habits. And then you have this whole little human who's dependent on you and certainly disrupting your sleep. And that's hard. It's a
Yep.
hard place to be. I'll tell you, my kids are probably tired of me talking about sleep. So it's fascinating to see how high that percentage is of people that don't talk about it. I don't think I could have even guessed what that would have been, but I'll tell you, my kids are tired of me talking about it.
I believe
But
it. In
they're good
preparation for this
sports.
thing,
They're good sports. Like they're good
you should
sports.
you
They
should ask
tolerate.
him. Turn the tables on him tonight and ask him. I did this to my son recently, the 6-year-old. As I was putting him down to bed, I asked him, I said, what do you think? Why do you think sleep's important? And he said, it makes my brain smarter and my muscles stronger. And
Oh,
I
love
stopped to
that.
myself. I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I was smiling very big. And I said, well, okay, I'm doing something right here. I'm
Absolutely.
practicing what I'm preaching in this regard, at least, of my life.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. That's great, right? Because we have to give them that time. I think you said it before about your 4-year-old. Like we have to talk during the day. We have to help them
Yeah.
process things about sleep, whether it's like sleep is good for you, but even just like, hey, we're gonna just try something different at bedtime, or
Yes.
I mean, obviously a baby, a 1-year-old, no, but even starting with like some 2-year-olds, we
Hmm.
can even 18 months, right? Like
Hmm.
we can start to use really simple language and they're not going to get it all, but we can start to have those
Yeah.
daytime conversations about sleep.
And even for your nighttime routines, I mean, we both said how important nighttime routine is, but why don't you try narrating it? What are you
Yeah.
doing and why are you doing it? Now we're going to turn the lights down because it's important that we sleep in the dark. It helps us sleep better. These sorts of things.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ooh, well, I love that last kind of snapshot into how parents are thinking about sleep. Any last things you think we didn't hit on before we wrap up?
I think we cover most of it. I mean, the one last thing I'm going to do is plug National Sleep Foundation
Oh,
website.
yes.
Visit us. We'd love for people to come in and get the content from our website. It's at so the nsf.org. Lots of great content there, and you're getting it from a good source.
Yep, and that will be linked in the show notes. I use y'all stuff, often. I love your recommendations. They are,
Wonderful.
the basis of what I use in my work with families. So
Perfect.
I'm so happy for them to exist.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, glad they're being used, certainly.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this conversation, for sharing all those insights. Like I love that you all captured all this information and thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on and helping to spread the information.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.